Hello everyone and welcome back to Frankie Says IELTS, and today's video is all about IELTS writing part 1, and that is the letter for the general test. So I'm going to be giving you guys 3 tips about how to write the letter and also some useful expressions that you can use throughout each phase of the task. Okay everyone, so the letter. Let's get straight to it. As mentioned, it forms part 1 of the writing section in the general IELTS test, and it is a 150 word limit for this question. So this is just an example question, guys, that you may get asked in the test, something along these lines. We're not going to write a response to this, but it's just so you can get an idea of the structure of this question. So it reads something like, you should spend about 20 minutes on this task. Your friends recently moved to a new city. You will also be moving to the same city. Write a letter to your friends and include, ask where to find a place to live, bullet point 1. Tell them what type of place you're looking for, bullet point 2. And bullet point 3, share some fun things you would like to do when you get there. And you must write at least 150 words. So, some tips to consider when you're writing the letter. The first is structure. As with any IELTS writing task, how you use your words and the order in which the sentences are written is a key component to how the task will get marked by the examiner. And on the following slide, I will provide 7 steps that you need to think about when you're writing the letter. So, tip number 2, an equal weighting on your 3 bullet points. So we saw in the previous slide that we have 3 points to consider: asking where to find a place to live, telling your friends what type of place you're looking for, and sharing some fun things you would like to do when you get there. And it's important in your letter to allocate roughly the same amount to each point. So maybe two sentences or 3 sentences maximum for each point. And the final tip to give is the tone. Now, the letter question will vary between a formal type of letter to somebody that you don't know in quite a formal context, such as a job application or you're writing to your local council. The second type would be an informal tone, where you are writing to someone you know in a really friendly situation, like the letter here. Catching up with your friends, wanting to know a bit about their city that you're moving into. And there's one in between, which is the semi-formal. Now, this is writing to someone that you know, but in maybe a formal context, maybe writing to your neighbor to discuss a problem with the bin allocation and how the rubbish is collected. Something along those lines. So you know your neighbor, but the matter is a little bit more serious. So being aware of which kind of tone the question is wanting you to write in is a key component in how you use your language when you're writing the letter. So let's just dive a little bit more deeply into that third point, the tone, because I can give you some useful expressions to consider. So guys, structuring the IELTS letter. What are the 7 stages? So number 1 is the greeting. That's where you say hello, you make it known who you're writing to. Then we have sentence 2, which is the introductory sentence. So some kind of way of breaking into the topic without being too specific into any of the 3 bullet points. Then 3, 4, and 5 in a sequential order. You've got bullet point 1, bullet point 2, bullet point 3, and again, trying to allocate an equal amount to each one. Then you've got number 6, your closing sentence, a way of summarizing and putting a bit of a marker on the end of the letter. And then the sign off is just simply where you put your name and the final end sign off before you do that. So some useful expressions. Referring to the first point, greetings. Now, if it's a formal type letter, you may want to start along the lines of to whom this may concern. Now, that's a common way to start a letter. And another one, slightly less formal than that, so it could be used in the formal or the semi-formal context, is dear. And it might be dear sir or madam, or dear and then the person's name if you do know who you're writing to. And then more semi-formal, informal type of letter, hi is sufficient. Hi is a nice way to introduce, but of course dear can also be used as well if you want it to sound a little bit more formal in that sense. So number 2, guys, the introductory sentence. Formal or semi-formal, we've got one such as, I am writing this letter with regards to, or I am contacting you today in relation to, or I am writing to discuss. So quite formal ways to broach the topic that you're talking about. If it's slightly less formal, so moving to the right here, guys, should say they're informal or semi-formal. You can put something like, I'm touching base to, or I've been meaning to check in with you for ages, or I'm writing to update you on. So it's something a little bit less formal. So you've got touching base, which is more of a colloquialism, more of an idiom, meaning get in contact. Check in, which is see how someone is, get up to date with their news. And to update you on, again, just to refresh someone, to let them know how you're doing. But these are slightly less formal ways to write that. Bullet point number 1, guys. So this is sentence 3. In a formal or semi-formal case, we might be quite structured with how we go about it in terms of our connective. So something along the lines of first of all, or firstly. If it's less formal, guys, you might say first things first. So it's a bit of a lighter way to introduce the first point, or my main piece of news is. Bullet point number 2, how will that look? So in a formal or a semi-formal context, it might be connective such as in addition, secondly, following on from this. But in a less formal essay or less formal letter, you could use something like, and that's not all, and then introduce the second point. I also want to, I'd better tell you about, I'm also keen to hear about. So we can see, guys, I'd better. So it's almost it's a less fixed way to describe it. It's a little bit lighter, a little bit more friendly in how you're delivering that message. Then bullet point number 3. So the 5th sentence, again, a slightly more formal way to close it if it's a formal letter. So lastly, finally, another point worth mentioning is, whereas if it's less formal, a bit more of an informal type letter, you might use a more familiar type expression, last but not least. Also, I have to hear more about. So again, it's like you want to hear a bit of news, a bit of gossip maybe. I have to hear more about what's going on with you. Also, I have to tell you about. So again, it's like you're really excited to give them this last piece of news. So it's somebody that you know. Or maybe a different connective on a separate note, I have to bring you up to speed. So bringing someone up to speed is also an idiom to suggest that you want to update them. You want to let them know what's going on with your latest situation. Finally, we have the last 2 sentences. So we have the closing sentence, which again, in a more formal context might sound something like, I'm looking forward to, or I'm eagerly awaiting, I sincerely hope you can. Less formal, more of an informal tone, I can't wait. So you're really bringing across the emotion more into that closing sentence. I'm really excited about, I'm really looking forward to. So compare I am looking forward to, which is a little bit more neutral, to I'm really looking forward to. So you're actually eliciting a little bit more emotion and excitement into that final sentence, or I hope to, or I really hope to. And the sign off is the final part of the essay. In a formal letter, you might use yours sincerely, and look at the bottom of the screen here, guys. If you have used the name of the person in your greeting, so if you know the person to some extent, you would use yours sincerely. Whereas if you, at the beginning of your letter, have said, dear sir, madam, or to whom this may concern, you don't know the name of the person at the beginning, you would say yours faithfully at the end in a formal letter. Informal letter, you might, again, show a little bit more feeling and get that across at the end. Lots of love, warmest wishes, or simply love. Okay, guys, so that was your presentation on some ideas about how to write the letter section of the IELTS test. And I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Hope you found some constructive elements to it that you can apply, maybe take little bits from it and use it as a means to progress your options when it comes to writing that question. Okay, guys, stay tuned for more videos and good luck with your ongoing studies. And don't forget to leave any comments if you have any questions as well. Thank you.